Urgent. Poland has cut Europe off from Russia and Belarus. Lukashenko has 48 hours. An emergency mobilization has taken place in Minsk. Warsaw has delivered a show of force that has paralyzed Belarus and Russia. Panic in Minsk. Lukashenko has declared an alert. Shock. A civil war has begun in Russia. Migrants are knocking the chair out from under Putin. Russia has exploded from within. One step away from the abyss. Russia is in the death zone. The sensation of the century. Ukraine is once again a nuclear power. Europe is secretly transferring doomsday weapons to Kyiv. Putin is literally melting from terror. The final report? The Kremlin is in the crosshairs. What Moscow feared most has happened. At this very moment, what the Kremlin feared has begun on the southern front. Ukrainian defenders have unleashed a fiery barrage. Putin's army is burning alive. The Ukrainian armed forces are on the home stretch. All this and more in our upcoming report, Hotspot. The Iron Curtain has slammed shut. Poland is derailing Russia and Belarus. Lukashenko, in a fit of hysteria, has announced mobilization. Warsaw has delivered a crushing blow that the dictators could not have imagined even in their worst nightmares. Panic in Minsk. Lukashenko has lost his composure. Watch for all the details. Poland makes a loud statement and strengthens its border. Reservists are being urgently called up in western Belarus. Coincidence?
You can only rely on yourself. Don't count on anyone else. I'm saying it for the 5th time. We have no friends in the world. None.
Men in Belarus have started receiving draft notices en masse. They are taken the very same day with no time to pack. And on top of that, their phones are confiscated. So, as relatives report, contact with those drafted is immediately lost.
Honestly, I would be pretty worried about this. The main difference is that this has never happened before. And in fact, Belarusian social media groups exploded precisely because this has never happened before. And people are asking each other, like, for example, is this happening in your area? Is this happening in some region? And what about you? Do you have this too? So the first question everyone is asking each other is this happening all over Belarus right now? Or is it still isolated to just a few regions of the country?
Officially, of course, they call it a combat readiness check, not a mobilization. But in Russia, everything also started with gatherings and inspections.
Well, I would say, first and foremost, the fact that information is being concealed. That is, indeed, a person is taken away immediately, right away, dragged off somewhere, and their phone is confiscated so they can't inform anyone about what's happening to them next. This is the highest level of information blackout. And this is the point that should especially concern us because we really don't understand what will happen to people next.
What's interesting, right? This is a call for reservists specifically in the western regions of the country that is near Poland. There is also a strategically sensitive area of Europe, Suwalki Corridor. There are too many coincidences in one place.
A fairly narrow section between the Kaliningrad region and Russia. Partially, in fact, the most populated settlement, Suwalki, is located not far from the border between Poland and Lithuania. And the width there, I think, is about 40 kilometers, so it's really quite small. And that is precisely the reason why, if you were to strategically concentrate a sufficiently formidable and serious array of military forces in that area, you could, if you will excuse me, potentially and quite rapidly establish a way to cut a continuous and secure terrestrial land corridor to the Kaliningrad region, which would serve as a vital link.
At the same time, Poland announced a 48-hour time frame. That's exactly how long they need to fully mine the border with Belarus and Russia.
Today, February 20th, the country withdrew from the Ottawa Convention and now has the full right to mine its borders.
But could the Belarusian maneuvers be connected to Poland's own actions?
Even though so far we are only seeing hybrid attacks, that doesn't mean something else couldn't happen tomorrow. A real attack in the hot spring area. Therefore, of course, I would consider this mobilization story as a real threat of a possible attack. And accordingly, well, if it takes more than 48 hours to lay mines, then it's time to start mining already.
Recently, Lukashenko also ordered a large-scale inspection of the combat readiness of the armed forces. At the military base, they practiced everything to the fullest extent.
We're not working for a grade, we're working to be ready to defend our country, to defend our national interests, our sovereignty, our Republic of Belarus.
And now, reservists are being urgently called up, so maybe this is just part of Lukashenko's inspection.
Undoubtedly, in my opinion, this looks like a signal from the West, but we shouldn't perceive it only as a signal. I believe that we should see this as a concrete military threat. And
Here Moscow appears again. Well, how could it be without her? The Kremlin's almost total influence makes Belarus not just an ally, but a real staging ground for provocations against NATO.
Frankly speaking, these are almost wartime conditions.
Just remember the statement about the Oreshnik on Belarusian territory.
Moreover, the first positions of the Oreshnik missile complex have been set up. It's with us. Since yesterday, it has been put on combat duty.
Or the information that Russia is using Belarusian territory to attack Ukraine and put pressure on European countries.
Operators of Russian Shahed drones are working against Ukraine, including from Belarusian territory. The coordination for strikes is maintained from Belarusian territory. Russia is using Belarus as a testing ground to blackmail Europe.
Nevertheless, Minsk has stated that they do not intend to go to war with Western countries. But it's unlikely that one Kremlin dictator will listen to another, the potato one.
as for being drawn into the war, I have my doubts because, in my opinion, Lukashenko still makes these decisions himself. And for now, he wants to keep his freedom to maneuver, including for his own dealings with Trump. Lukashenko will, of course, puff himself up and pretend there is a threat, but you can't say that he is completely under Putin's control. That's not the case. But that doesn't stop him from actually carrying out and preparing provocations.
Lithuania is closely monitoring the developments in the Republic, and they state that there is no reason to panic yet. But Russia clearly has its own plans for Belarus. After all, the constant probing at NATO's borders and testing the neighbors' reactions is a systematic strategy and a way to test the alliance's patience.
The south is on fire. The Ukrainian armed forces have reached the home stretch, a hellish roasting of the occupiers where occupation is knocking at the door. An urgent fiery report has begun. Ukrainian defenders have unleashed a real apocalypse on Putin's army on the southern front. This is not just an advance, it's total annihilation. See the details.
The Ukrainian air assault forces have officially gone on the offensive. The relevant statement was published the day before by the Air Assault Forces Command. Thus, in essence, the General Staff dispelled rumors and made an open statement. Ukraine is moving forward. The main task assigned to the units is to disrupt the occupiers' plans to advance in the Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia regions, as well as to defeat the enemy group and push them beyond the borders of Dnipropetrovsk region.
We can truly say today that the counterattacking activity of the Ukrainian Defense Forces is currently taking place in the Hulyai-Pol direction, in the Stepnohirsk direction, and not only there. It's not just the southern front, far from it. Therefore, it is clear that Ukraine is using the resources, reserves that we have, and the opportunities that have arisen, including by introducing a certain amount of chaos, such as disabling Starlink.
At the same time, a number of military analysts note that the Russian Federation is gradually recovering. Reserves that had been prepared for the spring offensive were redeployed from Moscow to the areas where the Ukrainian armed forces broke through. The occupiers are also partially trying to restore reliable communications on the front line. However, so far, neither effort has produced significant results.
There are several main reasons for the success of the Ukrainian attacks. These include the shutdown of Starlink, which resulted in the loss of stable communications for Russian troops, as well as the general exhaustion of Putin's units in this sector of the front after prolonged continuous attacks. In addition, the Ukrainian armed forces also took advantage of the weather conditions, the same fog that had previously played into the hands of Russian troops several times.
Another crucial factor in Ukraine's success was the preparedness of Russian troops on the other side of the front line, or more precisely, the almost complete lack thereof. Well,
I'll say it plainly, 80% of them are untrained troops. These are people that gathered from various villages under different pretexts, mobilization, recruitment, and pressure. So accordingly, they just throw them into battle.
it is also worth noting the discussions about the liberation by the Ukrainian armed forces. The military has now officially confirmed the liberation of hundreds of square kilometers of Ukraine as well. For example, the spokesperson for the Southern Defense Forces, Vladislav Voloshin, stated that more than 300 square kilometers have already been liberated. And the advance of our fighters continues.
Ukrainian forces are counter-attacking along a wide front, approximately 30 kilometers from Varvarivka to Ternovadovey. If the entire area is cleared of infiltrated Russian soldiers along this stretch, that's exactly what you get. 300 square kilometers.
The command notes that information about the advance of the Ukrainian armed forces is announced with a delay so as not to jeopardize operations as has happened in the past. But even what has already been made public allows for cautious predictions that the successes of the defense forces will help thwart Putin's major spring offensive.
One can say that Ukraine, again, I am not getting ahead of myself because the security of the military operation currently underway is paramount, has, in my view, at least managed today to make adjustments to the conduct of the Zaporizhzhia-Orikhiv offensive operation of the Russian Federation. And here there really are three key points.
As has already been noted, alongside the advancing assault units of the Ukrainian armed forces, the drone forces are also showing excellent results, continually increasing enemy losses. And the fact that the occupiers are forced to retreat has also debunked yet another myth of the Russian Federation. After all, people there do eventually run out.
If he had them, he would have already thrown in another 500,000, which simply aren't available in all directions. And he would have long since entered Pokrovsk and already taken Hulyapol and advanced on Zaporizhzhia. But that hasn't happened. In other words, he's not holding back resources somewhere or hiding them. As many people think, like, why is that? It's just that they simply don't exist. Really.
By the way, the commander-in-chief, Alexander Syrsky, also confirmed in an interview with Le Monde that the war in Ukraine has moved out of a deadlock. According to the general staff, the front has started to move back, and in recent days there have been up to 50 clashes daily in the Hulyapol and Oleksandrivka directions.
Russia has turned into hell, Putin has unleashed the machine of death, a bloody hunt for people, and an inferno in the streets. The Kremlin is burning down. An explosion from within is the beginning of the end for the Russian Federation. Russia has ignited, and this fire can no longer be put out. What is happening on the streets now chills the blood. See the details.
Putin has declared 2026 the year of national unity in Russia.
But what was the most important thing? We hold a deep and endless sense of respect for all of those diverse peoples who have officially become an integral part of Russia. We offer our absolute and complete respect for their unique culture and their heritage.
Traditions, for their spiritual values.
Meanwhile, interethnic clashes continue in Russia. Immigrants threw a stone at State Duma Deputy Matveev, and now they face more than 10 years in a high-security prison.
I witnessed 3 aggressive young individuals, 2 Tajiks and 1 Uzbek, viciously attacking an older man with heavy wooden sticks. We immediately pulled over and stopped our vehicle in order to intervene and put a definitive end to this violent situation. Illegal actions. My driver had his collarbone broken and I got my head smashed with a stone.
State Duma deputies are outraged that Russia spends too much on migrants. They want to take away their right to housing, education, and free healthcare, and not allow them to send large sums of money back home to use them exclusively as slaves and then send them back with the pennies they've earned. Send them back.
We lost 81 billion rubles because of migrants. And if we count the shadow tax evasion, that's about 429 billion rubles that our regions haven't received. And as a priority, we are proposing a ban on the patent system. The principle of the 3 Ps. Arrived, worked, said goodbye.
Deputy Delyagin went even further. After the scandal in the Penza region, where the mayor boldly allocated housing to non-Slavic citizens of Russia, Delyagin stated that it is necessary to ban giving apartments to Muslims because of their corrupt values.
I will send my inquiry, including a request to check the allocation of housing in general to hard-working compatriots who tirelessly and culturally enrich us with their traditional values. Because polygamy, just like the rape of children, from a certain point of view, is also considered a traditional value.
But the Muslims themselves are not far behind either. The commander of the Kadyrovites, Alaudinov, explains why Russians cannot marry Chechen women.
500,000 people ask this question every day. The same question. Why can't a Chechen woman marry a Russian? Wait a minute. First of all, who even knows if you're Russian or who you are? Who are you anyway? Instead of constantly shouting about how bad the Chechens are, it's the Russians who need advice to return to their own traditions.
The TikTok warriors of Kadyrov's Akhmat. Once again, they're whining that yet another blogger from the Russian community has supposedly insulted their non-existent honor and is bad-mouthing them on social media.
We are Russians, Tatars, Chechens, Ossetians, Azerbaijanis, Georgians, Armenians, Avars, Kazakhs, Belarusians, Kalmyks, and many others. We are fighting and dying, suffering severe wounds on the front lines for the interests of our multinational, native, beloved country, Russia. We ask the Prosecutor's Office, the Investigative Committee, the Federal Security Service, and the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Russia to bring to justice Max Divnich, who, on his Telegram channel, incites interfaith and interethnic discord.
Discrimination continues even in everyday matters. In addition to rudeness on public transport and in public places, so-called non-Russians are also refused rental housing.
My name is Nursultan. So I am a Russian citizen and my friend is a citizen of Kyrgyzstan. Will that be a problem? Today
You need to come to us to take a look.
we can also come by and take a look. I
don't know. Maybe those who come to us will agree. Well, probably there's no prospect somehow
of communication, so well, no, I'm afraid it simply won't work, especially coming from the school side of things.
It won't work. I call realtors and I always know that I need basically a certain strategy. Sorry, I have a strategy for how to make sure I get the apartment. First of all, the first point of the plan is to say as many words as possible on the phone before giving my name so that the realtor remembers that I speak without an accent. He needs to remember this, because if I say my name right away, the accent, he'll fill in the rest anyway. If I say, hello, my name is Idrak, and then he hears, I want an apartment.
Well, of course, all conflicts are forgotten when it comes to war. At the front, they take everyone they can, and as many as possible, and naturally, newcomers are prioritized.
This is our trend too. We started it. We grab them during raids, register them, and send them there. Some go, as I already said, about 10,000 have gone, but many also slip away.
It turns out that no matter how much Putin preaches about national unity, interethnic hatred in Russia is only growing, which, oddly enough, is constantly fueled by Putin's own inner circle.